Hello, and thank you for taking the time to view this video. This one is going to be dedicated specifically for the pro-offers for the Chicago indictment. But first, before we get into it, let's discuss this one topic. Because as you know, so many people in the last couple of years have switched the narrative completely to everybody knew about R. Kelly. This is a well-known, hidden in plain sight secret about him. Um, it's just ridiculous how they want to completely mind fuck you. And considering the timeline in which these allegations emerged and what the artist was actually doing during that time, you would see that it's kind of strange and coincidental, the things that began to occur. Because if you know, they like to use this whole publicity stunt with Aaliyah as leverage to say, hey, he married. They're not going to go all out and charge people for the crime of doing this. So it leads you to believe it's all bullcrap. But at the end of the day, in 98, when a lot of these allegations began to surface, let's think about the fact that R. Kelly had established his record label, which he still owns but is inactive to this day. And that's going to be a little side note for something to think about at a later time. But on top of that, in 98, he was also releasing hit music and playing basketball. So I kind of find it strange that he had all this time to be lurking at high schools and McDonald's during this time period. And then as you look at these proffers, you will notice that it clearly says that R. Kelly has no criminal background. And the only thing that I could find on his background was minor things like infractions. Specifically in 98, he was pulled over about a loud music ordinance. So it just seemed that if all this stuff was going on with R. Kelly in that time period, that would have been the perfect time for these people to capitalize on what they say was going on as far as pursuing justice. But the fact that so much time has passed and these people are coming with these salacious stories, it leads you to wonder, do they have the evidence to back it up? Specifically, if you look, you will find that R. Kelly played in these professional basketball leagues in 97, 98, and 99, as well as all the things he was doing musically. So if you put together a timeline and then you realize some of the allegations, you would find it very coincidental that these people have these allegations these specific times. But let's go on to these pro-offers because that's going to be the meat and potatoes of this video. According to the first one, the victim, HW, was age 16 at the alleged time of the incident, which was supposed to be between May 26, 1998 and May 25th, 1999. So according to her allegations, she was being assaulted for a year. Between the age of 16 and 17, she was being assaulted. According to this proffer, it says, the victim met Robert Kelly on her 16th birthday where she was celebrating at a restaurant. At that birthday, Robert Kelly's manager then gave the victim R. Kelly's business card with Robert Kelly's personal number written on it and told the victim Robert Kelly wanted her to call him. First thing I want to say is, why are they always skipping around the individuals who are directly involved in these stories' name. They have no problem saying Robert Kelly did this, but people like me would like to know which manager was it that she got this information from, and how do we know that it was really R. Kelly's information? The victim's mother heard this and took the card and told Robert Kelly's manager the victim was only 17. The victim later got that card from her mother's purse and called Robert Kelly. So the mother wouldn't disregard or discard the information altogether. She's going to put that in her purse and keep it, and her daughter sees this somehow and goes in her purse and reaches out to R. Kelly. Robert Kelly told the victim to come to his studio. Robert Kelly told the victim after her dad dropped her off at school, she could take a cab to his studio. The victim followed Robert Kelly's instructions. At that first encounter, at Robert Kelly's studio, located at 865 North Larrabee Street in Chicago, Cook County, Illinois, Robert had difficulty maintaining an erection and penetrated the victim repeatedly, vaginally and orally. Afterwards, Robert Kelly told the victim to get an envelope with money from the receptionist that the victim assumed was to pay for the cab rides to and from Robert Kelly's studio. The envelope contained a large sum of money, more than was needed to pay for 2 cab rides. The victim had similar sexual encounters about once a month with Robert Kelly from 5/26/98 to 5/25/1999. The defendant has no background. Now, let me tell you why I already have a problem with this first victim. Number one, the first thing that I already stated being that his timeline. The second thing is that the story that I just told, what she gave as her statement, that is not the same thing that you can easily go look up and see her talk about, in which it says specifically she was walking down the street and she was approached by Kelly. That is completely different than talking about I was at a birthday party and all that other hoopla about this phone number. And then according to this specific article, it says that she claims that she met Kelly in 98 when she was 16. He invited her to his studio on the promise of allowing her to appear in a music video, but instead they became involved in a relationship. So in the articles is given a depiction she was just out walking and R. Kelly just rolled up on her. But in this official document, it says quite the opposite. So that's going to be very interesting, and I'd like to see how that plays out, considering, as I mentioned, obviously they have no case, considering she was the one to come when this whole thing started and file a civil lawsuit, being that after seeing Surviving R. Kelly, that was her cue to go and try to get her settlement, not go to the police. Another interesting thing that I find so strange about these so-called victims are, why do they first go out, seek these attorneys? It's not like they first went to the police and tried to make official reports and were rejected or anything like that, because clearly their purpose was not to get justice. It was all about the bag. But moving on, let's go to the next one. The victim RL. And this is going to be the one in which they claim was in the infamous tape. But my thing with that whole storyline is, number one, these people have clearly violated this alleged victim's right in identifying her in so many ways, and I feel like that was all on purpose. Just like I said with the whole Aaliyah marriage certificate, if this was a minor, it's just certain information, certain documents you're not supposed to be able to have access to, and especially when it comes to minors. And yet, you can just go and look up this girl, Rashonda Landfair's name, and see all these salacious stories about her when she was allegedly a minor. So, anywho, according to RL's bond proffer, in 2001, a witness had conversations with Robert Kelly and Robert Kelly's associate, where the witness was asked to retrieve videotape showing Robert Kelly having sexual intercourse with the victims, in this case known when she was 14 years old. The witness obtained that video and watched it. The witness eventually turned this video over to the Cook County State's Attorney Office through his attorney. Hold up. That witness said she was in a room and she was looking through some tapes. That ain't what this said. See, that's where they be missing me with that bullshit. Could they be trying to insert the lies in with these stories to fit what they need to get this man arrested? And that is the problem. The witness has identified the girl in the video as the girl he knows to be the niece of S.E., Tiffany Edwards. Additionally, the witness identified the scenes from the video as having been from Robert Kelly's house located at 1 Merrill's Lane, Olympia Fields. The victim repeatedly says she is 14 years old, and Robert Kelly is seen penetrating the victim orally and vaginally, and the victim performs oral sex on Robert Kelly. Sparkle has identified the girl in the video as her niece. The victim is in this case. So, the pronoun used to describe this witness was he. That sounds like maybe the Chuck Freeman character. Same individual that sued R. Kelly for not paying him for retrieving this alleged tape. See, I made a video on that in which I uncovered the fact that these people actually claim to have been authorized to retrieve child porn, get it back, get a payment. They get mad, they don't get paid, so they sue him. That is so niggerish. You are breaking the law, but we're going to file a lawsuit. Does that sound familiar to what's going on right now? But anywho, yet again, people keep thinking this is yet again another case of double jeopardy, but all they had to do was switch up the charges and make it from the tape itself to the actual act. But moving on, LC. On February 18, 2003, at 865 North LaBarre Street in Chicago, the victim was 24 and worked as a hairdresser for Robert Kelly. While the victim was waiting alone in a room for Robert Kelly to come in so she could braid his hair, Robert Kelly entered saying he didn't want his hair braided that day, he wanted his head massaged. At the time, he said this Robert Kelly had his penis pulled down had his pants pulled down and he was pointing to his penis. Robert Kelly grabbed the victim by the head and tried to force her mouth onto his exposed penis, but the victim was able to resist. Robert Kelly then masturbated and ejaculated on the victim and spit in her face several times. They left that part out in the interview. All she said was he spit on her face. And that led me to asking the questions, well, where did the semen come in? Because you claim there's semen on a shirt, and somehow magically you kept that shirt from 2003 all the way to 2019 with this DNA evidence on it. That's very interesting. The male DNA identified in the semen sample is a match to Robert Kelly's DNA profile. That's just interesting. Just defies all logic that she could have this shirt with semen on it for all these years and they retrieve this DNA evidence off of it. So let's think back. Number one, first victim, Holly Williams, she come in motivated by a settlement. Number two, the RL victim, she doesn't say gave this statement. She is not the one making the allegation. It is a he who feels some type of way about his alleged role in this scam, along with another individual who feels some type of way that she didn't want to tell the world she was married and having an affair and ain't no telling what else going on in the background. Then you got LC, who got this shirt 15 plus years with DNA evidence on it. This is one interesting case, don't you think? And let's go to the last one. JP says she was 16 between May 1st, 2009 and January 31st, 2010. So the main points, also I must point out, was to go into the 90s and then also go into the area in which his alleged first trial was proceeding to make it appear he was still engaging in these alleged acts. The victim attended the criminal trial of Robert Kelly in Chicago in 2008. She was interviewed by a reporter and was noted as having an ID and was of age, seen in many photographs, yet somehow R. Kelly is supposed to know that she's a minor. And it's just very ironic that she's strategically placed in these photos. But nonetheless, does this really mean that she had a relationship with R. Kelly? According to her, the victim told Robert Kelly how old she was, and he invited her to his house at Olympia Fields. I could have sworn she said she lied about her age, and then after the fact, she told him, and he was like, it's okay. The victim say one of the shirts she was wearing with Robert ejaculated on her and gave that shirt to Olympia Fields police. The shirt was submitted for DNA and semen was identified on the shirt. Did she give the shirt at that time? Just another one. So she got on the internet and said she filed a report back then and had this evidence and submitted it. So if that's the case, if you submitted it then, how'd you get it back to submit it now? On top of that, another issue, 2009, 2010, that's another 9-year period in which you expect us to believe DNA is just sitting there marinating on this shirt for y'all to hand over conveniently. So in a nutshell, as I have in so many words hinted, this case is weak as shit. It's all smoke and gas. So of course, in order to sell it to the public, they need to keep piling on these stories, mixing these people up, adding them to other cases. But at the end of the day, they still have to bring their burden of proof. And all I see is a lot of circumstantial stuff, a lot of things that's going to be dismissed and thrown out. At the end of the day, these 4 individuals that were used to lodge this whole case against R. Kelly in Chicago are not going to guarantee a conviction, in my opinion. But what are your thoughts? What do you think about these alleged accusers? Go and look them up. JP, Geronda Pace, LC, Lanita Carter, RL, Rashona Landfair, HW, Heather Williams. And interesting enough, we wouldn't know these people's names had they not been so gung-ho on giving all these stories and interviews. So at the end of the day, is it really slut-shaming and bashing to really want to get the whole story before you crucify a man and sentence him to a life behind bars? Have a good day.
Lord, please forgive me how I'm living.